binder to binder. I'll put your binder here. So, Emilie Cady her writing is rather dense. By that I mean her chapter on faith explores so many different ideas that I was kind of having a brain scramble trying to figure out how to narrow it down to have a conversation today and really take some time with you all to anchor in some of these teachings in a powerful way. One of the things I did do, though, was I copied, like last week, I copied some notes for those of you who don't have the book and you just want to get a little more information on the back table. These are just references to Emilie Cady's book, Lessons in Truth. I'd like to just start with a Bible passage because I think in this passage we can begin to pull out some of the ideas that Emilie Cady gives us in this chapter 5 on faith in Lessons in Truth. And the passage is one that many of you have may heard. It's the story of the man who was healed at the pool of Bethesda. So I'm going to just read the story from the Bible. It's in John chapter 5. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. And whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease they had. Now a certain man was there who had had an infirmity for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, Jesus said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." And Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well. He took up his bed and he walked. And that same day was the Sabbath. And the Jews therefore said to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." He answered them, "He who made me well said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" Then they asked him, "Who is the man who said this to you? 'Take up your bed and walk.'" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, and a multitude was being in that place. Afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. So it's kind of an interesting story, isn't it? And what I want to do is I want to pull in some of the teachings that Emilie Cady is giving us in this chapter for us to kind of see how we can often be like the man at the pool of Bethesda. Many of us carry our condition, whether it's we're blind to something or we're lame, we're not taking the next step, or we feel paralyzed. Many of us have been doing it for 37 years, 38 years, 40 years, right? Am I on a page that people can be with me on? We have these kind of things that have happened in our lives, and we can be like the man at the pool. We know that when the angel comes and the water gets kind of fluffed up, the first one in the pool is going to get healed. We have this kind of like, oh, there's something out there that's going to really relieve me of the pain that I'm in, the suffering that I'm in, the bondage, Emilie Cady would call, that I'm in. But for whatever reason, like this man at the pool, what is he doing? He's making an excuse, right? He's somehow the victim there. Oh, I just start to go, and then the people, they just climb over me, and, I'm never going to get there. So I just want to kind of frame this very simple story in the context of what Emilie Cady shares with us as faith. So she talks about different kinds of faith. She talks about what she calls blind faith. She said most people think blind faith is good enough for ministers and children, blind faith. But we want to understand more about faith. And how she describes blind faith is very interesting. She said, blind faith most of us have because we have this kind of intuitive awareness that there's something greater than who we are. It's like the man at the pool. He knew that there was the possibility that if he got himself into the water, he could be healed. So we have this blind faith, this sort of intuitive knowing, which is a good beginning, but it's not enough. It's not enough to get us in the pool and get us totally out of our condition of being, blind, not being able to see the truth, feeling like we can't move forward, or simply feeling paralyzed in our life. Emilie Cady says what we need is a different level of faith. We need what she calls understanding faith. And if we begin to kind of unpack this a little bit with Emilie Cady and also with some other teachers of unity that I've done some research with, we begin to understand that when she's talking about blind faith, she's talking about a level of our consciousness that hasn't completely anchored in with a deep knowing that we are one with the presence of the divine. Just as Meg shared with us in this beautiful prayer this morning, just as we share in our 5 unity teachings. There's the one presence, one power of God the good, omnipotent, and we are made in that divine image, that one presence and one power. What happens, though, in this level of faith that many of us kind of, I want to say, almost wallow in, is we know this at a certain level, but our conscious mind, that aspect of mind we talked about last week, these 3 levels of mind, superconscious when we're connecting into the divine mind, the conscious mind, which has the ability to choose. The conscious mind can go, yeah, I'm going to pick up my mat and go, or no, it really looks too hard, those people are climbing over me. The conscious mind has that quality to choose, yes, I know the truth of who I am, or rely on some old story about a weakness or a disability that we have in consciousness or even in the physical body. So blind faith happens when the conscious mind has not fully embraced the deeper knowing or the spiritual understanding of who we are. And spiritual understanding is an interesting, she has a whole chapter on spiritual understanding, but if we just take a moment and see that spiritual understanding is our ability to know what we're standing on, that we're standing on this truth that each one of us is made in the image and the likeness of the divine presence, of the God life, and that we live and move in this condition of God's goodness, always ever flowing to us. And yes, we have the capacity in consciousness with a conscious mind, or what Emilie Cady would call that soul quality of us, which has a choice. We have the choice to choose in any moment. And we move out of blind faith when we anchor ourselves more deeply in the spiritual understanding of the truth of who we are as spiritual beings. So it's a movement in consciousness. And we can see, as we go in our spiritual journey, this is part of what happens in terms of not only our awareness of our spirit and how it impacts us in our daily life, but it also shows up in the outer, in the things that we demonstrate in our life. Unity uses that word demonstrate. Maybe you want to say manifest, or like the thing, what you become in your life, how you show up, how you give those gifts from that little fountain that we talked about last week, how you uniquely use the gifts that are yours. So part of what Emilie Cady shares with us in this chapter is when we begin to move into this understanding faith, where we're literally anchored, we're anchored in to the deep knowing of the presence of God within us. We move to a different awareness of how Spirit moves in and through us. Blind faith, we can tap into intuition. People can say, oh, you know, I really hear the Spirit of God really talking to me. I'm getting a message, like the guy in Bethesda. He got the message. Go and sit by this pool. There's something going on over here. But he wasn't completely inspired by the message. He didn't own the message enough to do whatever it takes to get his body into the pool. It wasn't until that energy of the Christ, that divine energy within each one of us, that perfect pattern of our whole and really our natural pattern of goodness and grace, until that presence of the Christ, which is exemplified by Jesus, became anchored in him as well. He got the message. Pick up your pallet and walk. Get in the water. You know, and the minute he anchored in that, what was his to do happened. He had no question. There was no more of the victim in there. So I think this is such a powerful thing for us to become aware of first of all, beginning to examine our faith and see where we may really wobble in terms of our awareness of the truth of who we are as spiritual beings, whole and healthy, vitally alive, full of what Charles Fillmore has identified of the 12 powers. These 12 powers exemplify all the qualities of the divine. So in any moment, we have the capacity to hold the power of life, which is the healing power of vitality that we want in our bodies, isn't it? It's not so much that we want to walk, we want to feel alive, we want to move the body. Or we want right relationship, we want the power of love to be flowing through us. So moving beyond just this first are you guys with me here? Okay. Moving beyond this first understanding of the difference between this initial, what we might call blind, intuitive faith of knowing there's something out there, to the rock-solid understanding faith that we are one with the presence of God. The next piece that Emilie Cady really pulls out for us is to become aware of what are the promises of God. What are the things that are the nature of God, that God says, you know, you have all these qualities that I carry, the quality of love, the quality of life, the quality of spiritual strength, the quality of faith. All of this is in you. These are promises that I'm giving you because you are made in my image. How do we begin to own these in our life? And this is where she talks about something that I think is really a unique piece of this particular chapter. And for me, this has always been a kind of one of the things that I would always fall back to in my life when I would have that little feeling, oh, you know, something's going to happen. I don't really know what it is. And, you know, I'm going to just share this a little bit because this was an experience I had in my own life about this. And maybe some of you can relate to this in your own journey because it was definitely a journey. When I was initially a licensed Unity teacher at Unity in Marin, and I always wanted to play with the ministers. I was like, I want to take this class. Well, you're not a minister, so you can't. This is only for ministers. And I'm like, come on. You know, I just was too big for my britches, my mother would have said. But so what I decided to do was, well, if they won't let me play because I'm not a Unity minister, because I had kids and I couldn't go to Unity Village. That was the deal at the time. My kids were, you know, I was a single mom and my kids were, and I wasn't going to move to Missouri. So that was my choice. Anyway, so I decided, heck with you. I'm going to go to Matthew Fox's school and I'm going to become a doctorate of ministry. I mean, it was kind of done a little bit out of like, you know, that kind of, and I don't know if anybody's ever done anything like that, but at the time I didn't know that was why I was doing it. But it was very clear after a while that I realized that was why I was doing it. So anyway, I lived in Marin, the school was in Oakland, and there were two other women, and we used to carpool to school. And I'd be in the backseat of the car, and I'm looking over at Berkeley and Oakland, I'm going, there's no Unity Church here, what's the deal? You know, all these people in Berkeley, there should be a Unity. So I just had that little thought driving back and forth for like probably a year or 2 years. No Unity Church, no Unity Church. Well, then all of a sudden, that was like a little bit more than a little kind of like idea. It was like, well, maybe I could start a unit, because you could start a Unity Church as a licensed teacher. You just had to get permission. You had to go through a lot of ropes. Then you had to go to school for 4 years at Unity Village. Anyway, so I did that. I was like, it was like that little seed that even though it started from a place that wasn't really consciously, I would say, in alignment with truth. It was kind of, a victim thing I was doing. But eventually, that little desire kind of built. And not only did it build in me, but the universe started giving me things. I would sit in this one coffee shop in North Berkeley, because I like the potatoes, not the eggs so much, but they had really great potatoes. And I would sit there and I would just kind of plan about how I was going to start a Unity Church. I didn't know anybody in Berkeley. Anyway, it was September 11th that happened. And I thought, it's time. I got to start this church. So I put an ad in the paper, and I had 9 people the first Sunday. And ultimately, things just started to happen. Somebody would come to my little space, I had a little space in Strawberry Creek Design Center, and there were Swedenborgians who used to come to the Unity service, because Swedenborg and Unity, there's a lot of similarities there. They had a big church in El Cerrito, and they came to me and they said, hey, we'd really like it if you would bring all your people up to our building, because we're losing our church status because we don't have a church in there anymore. So they asked me, and I said yes. And we were up there for a long time, and then one day the community said, hey, we want our own building. That was on a Sunday. We had a meeting, and everybody's like, yeah, let's go find a building. The next day, the board president found a building, an empty church in Berkeley, and he called me, and I went over, and we looked in the windows, and we called the people, and we said, hey, we'd like to rent your building. And they said, great. So there was just like all these kind of little synchronicities happened. And what I realized as I was thinking about this morning and thinking about Emilie Cady's teaching, what she says is desire in the heart is always God tapping at the door of your consciousness with his or her infinite supply. Desire in the heart is always God tapping at the door of your consciousness with his infinite supply. And whenever those little urges kind of begin to come, and you've had them, right? Some little thing that kind of plops down as a seed in consciousness saying you should do this, you should call so-and-so, you should take this action, you should not take this action. When we get this, we begin to understand and claim the truth of this, that this desire is not, it's not mine. Especially when it keeps growing, it keeps building. It's like we're getting roots on that desire. The universe is talking to us. The promises of God basically are always available to us. All the good, all the blessings of the 12 powers are always available to us. And we only feel them. We only feel them as a desire in the heart, as a divine idea that comes to us, because it's on its way to us already. It's already on its way to us out of the mind and heart of God. And it wasn't somebody else who got this idea to start a church in Berkeley. If they did, they didn't the tappings must have stopped somewhere. We each have our own unique makeup. We each have our own kind of gifts of spirit from all these 12 powers. We have a makeup that calls us to be and to do certain things in the world. And so the power of faith as we move into a deeper awareness from blind faith to understanding faith, invites us in to know that when we feel something coming to us, when we get that tapping of spirit, when we're at the pool of Bethesda and we got the tapping, we have to be open to asking, to finding out more about what it is that's being given to us, because it's already available to us. It's already available to us out of the mind and the heart of God. It's such a powerful, powerful awareness. She also says, remember, this desire in the heart for anything is God's sure promise sent beforehand to indicate that it is yours already. It is yours already in the limitless realm of supply. And whatever you want, you can have for the taking. Now, she is very clear that you can't want somebody else's husband. You can want it, but that's not what you really want. She's always asking us to look underneath what we think we want in the outer. Like maybe we think we want more money in our bank account, but it may be not more money that we really want. Maybe it's a sense of freedom that we want, an ability to be more creative in our life, do more things in our life. So this lesson in truth is such a powerful teaching for us, because when we begin to see the combination of the power of faith, whether it's blind faith or understanding faith, as kind of a little bit of a flashlight for us, it's like an awareness of what is possible for us. Charles Fillmore talked about faith a little differently than Emilie Cady does, and I put his quote here in the bulletin. He says, faith is the perceiving power of the mind, linked with the power to create substance. And what he's saying here is that it's that flashlight of faith when we begin to see what's possible. Even if it's just a little tiny pinpoint, we begin to see what's possible. It's from that place that energy expands for us. We begin to see who we are. We begin to see the truth of our being. And it comes through those desires that we have in our heart. The subtle kind of, you could call it initially an intuition almost. We shine a light on that and we begin to see that there's more around us. That's certainly what happened in my journey of creating a ministry in Berkeley. It just kind of began to grow and get bigger and bigger. And then there were people who were coming who wanted, remember sitting in a Lessons in Truth class with Tad Toomey. And I just met him for the first time, and he said, oh, I'd like to sing a song. And he played his guitar. And out of that first class, I said, hey, it'd be really great. Let's create a band. We created a band. People came who played the violin, the mandolin. We had a drummer. We had, some incredible singers. It was just like a divine idea came out of a gift that was someone's gift, because they were willing to offer it up, to speak it up. So it's such a powerful thing for us to really begin to not only tune into the inner movement of spirit within us, but to be willing to shine the flashlight on it, to begin, like Charles Fillmore said, it's perceiving power of the mind. We have to see it first. There's a teacher, her name is Vera Dawson Tate, and you'll see on this paper that I sent, on the very bottom, I put a link for her audio files. She's no longer with us. She passed in, I think, early 80s. But she was in charge of Unity's correspondence school, and she worked at Unity Village, and her nickname was Miss Lessons in Truth, because she knew Lessons in Truth so incredibly powerfully well. So this link, if you're interested, you can go through these chapters with her as she did with the correspondence school, because that's how Unity kind of grew, was correspondence school. And one of the things, she uses this example when we talk about how, the gifts of spirit, the presence of God, all the powers of God that are in the divine mind in God presence, in universal consciousness, also reside in each one of us. But we need to ask for it. We need to like say, yes, I'm embracing that. Just like the man at the pool was willing to embrace what Jesus said. Jesus said, do you want to be healed? Pick up your pallet, do it. You know, it's that connection with higher consciousness. She said she uses the example of, we walk into a room and it's all dark, but we know that there's electricity in the room. We know there are lights in the room. We have to be willing to turn the switch on. It's the same kind of thing with the blessings and presence of all the qualities of the divine that are in each one of us. We have to be willing to flip the switch. We need to ask. We need to be present, because there's a flow between our asking and making a claim. It's not like we're asking for something that isn't already ours. She said it's also a little bit like walking into a store and not asking for what you want. You know, window shopping, I guess, just wandering around and walking out again, you know, even though there's a desire in our heart of what we do want. So this chapter, to me, it's my favorite chapter, and Janice was supposed to speak today, and I said, okay, I'll give it to you, I'll let you do this, even though it's my favorite chapter. And then she wasn't feeling well, so I got to scramble and figure out something to share with you today. But I do hope that those of you who are in the class, that you really will dive into this. We're going to talk more deeply about it on Thursday in the class. We're going to really focus just on this chapter. And those of you who are not in the class, I really invite you to, you're Unity students. You know, we're not all perfectly, you know, we're not all in the pool yet. Let's just put it that way. You know, sometimes we're in there and other times we're not. And it's not about the body at all. It's about our consciousness, you know, how we make choices, how we choose, what we choose, basically, what we choose. To choose and use, basically. So I invite you to just grab the sheet I put in the back and dive more deeply if it's part of your nature to be an explorer in consciousness. So let's take a moment now and invite our ushers to turn the lights out, and we'll take a little journey here in consciousness. So I invite you to relax more deeply in your body. Take a moment to just breathe, feel the grace and the presence of the life of the divine that indwells you in every cell of your body. Moving beyond the intellect and into a place of spaciousness in the heart. Trusting and knowing that whatever you ask for in prayer, believe, have faith that you have already received it and it will be yours. Knowing that the desire that you have in your heart is God always tapping at the door of your consciousness with God's infinite supply. A supply that is forever useless to us unless we make a demand for it, unless we claim it, unless we say, this is who I am. So taking a moment now, feeling the promise of the divine in your life. Knowing that if there's something on your heart, something you've been longing for, or even a tiny nudge that you're getting about who you can be or what you can do, something you could say, a gift that you can offer, whatever it might be. Maybe a healing in the body or more love in a relationship, or a deeper sense of peace inside yourself so that you can be a presence of peace in a world full of turmoil and chaos. Just take a moment and know that this desire on your heart is literally a promise that's come to you out of the mind and heart of God. You can trust it. You can have faith in it. You can shine a light on this. And as you anchor yourself more deeply into the knowing that you are one with the presence of the divine, body, mind, and spirit, you are one. You are one with faith and imagination, a faith that perceives things and an imagination that conceives things. You're one with spiritual understanding and with the power of your willingness to say yes or no. You're one with the energy and enthusiasm of zeal and the power to speak the word, whether you do it aloud or in the silence of your heart, affirming the truth of who you are as a divine being. You are one with the power of love to harmonize and unify, and the power of wisdom to make right choices, take wise action. You are one with a divine order that outpictures in every area of life, just as you are one with a deep and powerful, persistent strength of spirit to keep on keeping on, beyond appearance. And you are one with the power of renunciation or letting go, as you release things that no longer serve you and say yes to life, yes to freedom, no to bondage. So feeling your oneness with the presence and the power of this universal intelligence that we know as the divine or God. Take a moment in the silence, going beyond that intuition, and anchor yourself into a deep, understanding faith in this moment. I am the hands and feet of the divine. The Holy Presence does its mighty work through me. And I claim all the powers of divine mind, of the God Presence, to live and move and have its very presence and being in and through my life, through the words I speak, the actions I take, the thoughts I think, the feelings I have. May they always be one with the living spirit of truth. And offering gratitude for the blessings of all those who have shared the teachings in unity, a deeper understanding of the wisdom and power and love of the teachings of Jesus, and a deeper knowing in our own hearts and minds of the truth of who we are as we move through these days and weeks and months, feeling the presence of love as our guide. We say, thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. And gently bringing awareness back into the body, that beautiful body, this go around. As you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to our community of love and grace at Unity.